And again, everybody give a big round of applause for our dancers, our interpretive guides, One Scale Heritage Park, National Aboriginal Day.
First Nation is a term used to describe Indigenous people in Canada who are not Métis or Inuit. According to the 2016 census by Statistics Canada, 977,230 people in Canada identify as being of First Nation heritage, a growth of 39.3% since 2006. There are 634 First Nations in Canada speaking more than 50 distinct languages.
A lot of parents hid their children because they didn't want them to go to the boarding school.
We were taught not to speak our language. Our hair was cut. We were taught not to have anything to do with our culture.
Her culture had been taken away from her, so mother wasn't able to teach us about the traditions.
People are going to have to start learning how to forgive themselves for the ones who are lost. A society of abandonment. It's up to us to know our culture.
Drum is the heartbeat of Mother Earth.
When you hear the drum, it signifies that relationship that we all have within ourselves.
Regardless of what tribe you're from, I think you do feel a sense of pride.
I believe our tradition is going to come back.
First Nation people are beautiful people.
There has been 524 years of holistic genocide on Turtle Island. We're the ones that are dying. It's not you that is dying.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is apologizing to Indigenous Canadians after the remains of more than 200 Indigenous children were found last week.
Schools where children suffered decades of physical, sexual, and mental abuse. Before his remarks at a powwow in Alberta, the Pope met with Indigenous peoples in a cemetery at a former school.
We literally get our identities from our land. So we have more than a passing need for water. It's a spiritual, cultural relationship that has been interfered with. If the water's doing not well, human beings are going to reflect that.
It's something we take for granted in Canada. Access to fresh drinking water at the turn of a tap. But believe it or not, there are some communities in our country that are still without it.
Trudeau promised to eliminate boil water advisories on First Nations reserves within 5 years.
These objectives were based on the assumption that Aboriginal cultures and spiritual beliefs were inferior and unequal. Indeed, some sought, as was infamously said, to kill the Indian in the child. Today, we recognize that this policy of assimilation was wrong, has caused great harm, and has no place in our country.
Indigenous people have been in Canada since the time immemorial. They formed complex social, political, economic, and cultural systems before Europeans came to Canada. With colonization and white settlement, international Indigenous ways of life were forever altered. Colonial practices and policies had historical ongoing impact on generations of Indigenous people. Such practices and policies, when combined with racism, acts of segregation, loss of land, and devastating or unequal access to food resources and public services, have had devastating consequences on the health and socio-economic well-being of Indigenous people.
Government's absence over generations in recognizing and implementing Indigenous rights has resulted in social and economic exclusion, uncertainty, and litigation, when our shared focus should have always been on creating prosperity and opportunity for everyone.
AFN is the national organization representing First Nation people in Canada, which includes more than 900,000 people living in more than 600 First Nation communities in cities and towns across the country. AFN works to advance the collective aspiration of First Nation individuals and communities across Canada on matters of national or international nature and dealing with government and public and private sector. Land, health, education, national resources, and housing continues to be their top priority. The of AFN coordinates discussions and provides analysis on legislation and policies, and it lobbies for the actions on national issues like the legacy of residential schools and the rates of missing and murder of Indigenous women and girls.